Never before has the power to shape global wellness trends been taken out of the hands of medical professionals and handed over to the charismatic strangers on the internet. So proud to propose. In this speech, first some characterization, and some framing, and then next moving on to my one large argument. Moving on to my characterization, right? What does like influencers actually look like in this debate, right? We think that probably have the incentive to make money and gain reputation through some extent. Secondly, they probably want, for example, a lot of fans. They also want to, for example, accept sponsorships that actually make sense, right? Next, then, what do you think health-based influencing then looks like, right? We think that it looks like some valuable information, like there's some valuable information, but it's not for everybody. There's also going to be some sponsorships that may be hidden or may not be hidden. We also think that it's probably going to be either too generic or too niche because they actually want to capture attention. And reason why influencers actually choose to do this is A, because they want to make more money, but B, they think that they want to appear to be a healthy and good channel that's good for you, right? So what was the status quo before the rise, right? We think that there was some health-based influencing, but most is like valuable information because not like these influencers aren't like just follow the trend or something, but also people are probably mostly like relying on like better things. For example, very trusted like websites or organizations for their health advices and actually searching online for trustworthy like sources, right? Or just like going to your own like doctor, right? We think that after the rise or in the rise, which is what we're debating on right now, influencers decide to do health-based like influencing because they want to follow the trend without credentials, right? What is the alternative on the side? Like, for health information, right? Government like trusted institutions and like doctors like healthcare professionals who actually give you good advice, right? And if you care about accessibility or the money, you could just go to like these like healthcare organizations online that provide you far better information and advice. Moving on to my argument then, why do you think that health-based influencing actually gives bad advice, which is bad for people's health, right? The incentive analysis here of people to follow these influencers is because they idolize them, they look up to them so much, and they think that they look very fit. Also, at the same time, they're very popular, and therefore, if so many people think that they're actually good, then therefore they probably are good for me as well, right? I think that if they think that if I work out and eat from the same restaurant every day like they do, I can become like that. Then I could become body T, right? Um, Four layers of mech here. Firstly, I think that there's no actual experience or like people on these like influencer like accounts aren't actually professional, right? They have no credentials and they don't usually have any like profession in healthcare or mental health. At least that's like what most of these influencers are, right? Except for like some few exceptions. They actually don't know what's actually good for you. Therefore, they don't actually know what's good for people. And instead, and like they probably just go on like very niche ideas or either just very generic ideas that don't actually make any sense. They can give the wrong advice to you because they don't actually know what's good for you because it's not for everyone. Leading me to my second mechanism, it's not for everyone, right? For example, people have like these influencers probably use like things like personal anecdotes. Oh, I eat like I eat like one banana from Dole every day, and therefore I am very fit, right? I think that they fail to realize that not everybody has the same body type. Not every person will actually go through this like or treatment like very well, right? I think the fans are likely to follow this advice still, even when the influencer tells you that it's not proven medically to be good for you. Thirdly, then, about sponsorships. I mean, there's often many sponsors where advertisers reaching out to these like influencers, because like so that these like influencers like they could promote their health products, right? I think that these influencers are profit based, right? They don't actually care about the general health of the public because it doesn't impact them directly. As long as they don't get themselves into legal trouble, they don't actually care, right? We think that these, for example, like products can be hidden in plain sight, right? Like the influencers always telling you to eat the same meal with that specific product that might actually be bad for your health, right? We think it's bad because instead of just promote it to you. Fourthly, then, about how there's a lack of accountability on their side of the house because these people are actually profit-based, right? Since these like influencers are actually profit-based, they don't actually have accountability, right? There's a conflict of interest. They don't actually care about these kinds of things, and therefore they don't think that they're actually accountable because, oh, I'm not a proven doctor. I don't really care about this because I'm not actually accountable on like whatever they say. Like I'm just going to put a disclaimer that like you should consult a medical professional first, right? All right, moving on to my four impacts here. Firstly, about health, public health and actual safety, right? I think it's really obvious, but because of all these reasons, they have tried to catch you and like give you like very bad advice, right? Secondly, I think that it's going to be very unfair because there's going to be sponsors taking advantage instead of actually having the true like incentive on actually helping people, which was before the rise. We think that you have the incentive of actually of like actually earning money and therefore just getting views and becoming more popular, right? Thirdly, why is this essential also bad for an influencer, right? At the end of the day, when they finally get found out, when it's too late, right? When a lot of people already follow these lifestyle things, they already face a lot of backlash too, right? I think it's very bad for an influencer. But fourthly, I think it actually diverts attention from like trusted medical institutions because instead of consulting like very trusted like your doctor or like very good organizations online, you actually go onto these like random 15-second YouTube shorts and you look at what they say that you should do with which is also what my DP is going to expand on later. Therefore, what did we tell you today, Judge? Firstly, we told you that it actually we told you that the true incentive of these people like or these influencers isn't actually to give like good health advice. It's rather to actually give you like is rather to actually gain profit. And secondly, that this basically means that they're probably going to give bad health advice, which we think is both bad for the public is also bad for the medical institutions. For all these reasons, so proud to.
I don't care that climate change is a problem if I don't know that it's a problem. I don't care if an economic recession exists if I don't know that it exists. The opposition operates under the false assumption that this debate is about how you get their advice. And while absolutely that's definitely a part of it, the more important thing is that people don't even know most of the time what is a problem, what exists. People aren't even aware that health is an issue or that they do need to exercise more or that they're not eating in the right way. They're not even aware of these things. And so influencers bring these things to people's attention, whereas doctors only solve the problem after it has become a problem, which is not good. We want to stop it before it even becomes an issue. Now, a few things to note here. Firstly, they talk about where you're going to get like your kind of health advice from. They say like, if we look at what these people are today, if we look at the health ministers who all, don't necessarily look that healthy, if we look at the stuff they put out, for example, the food pyramid, which for a long time had grains as the most important nutrient, when for years influencers have been saying the most important nutrient is protein and stuff, and now finally the food pyramid has been flipped, it seems like influencers have been ahead of the game the entire time. And also, it's utterly preposterous that they would say a doctor is the right place to get your healthcare advice. Well, yes, it's good to go to a doctor. This is not immediate. They don't have all of your best interests at mind 24/7. You can't like go see them 24/7. It costs money to go see a doctor. It doesn't cost any money to go online. And a doctor session is short. It's not going to be customized. It's not going to constantly adapt to fit your needs. It's not going to give you encouragement to keep going if you're struggling. All right. That's the difference. Influencers, they're popular because what they do works. The reason why they are so viral, the reason why they have trustability and people listen to them is because they have a lot of followers and people follow them because what they say works. If you're a health influencer and the stuff you're telling people to do sucks and it doesn't work, why would anybody follow you? Or why would anybody follow you in the long term? They wouldn't continue going back. No, the difference is you have good reviews. All right. Think about the I word. It's not igloo, it's not iguana, it's incentives. All right. Influencers have an incentive to make profit. Now they say that like people think that these influencers are fit. Well, they are fit. That's precisely the reason why they do have followers, because their message works. And also, in case you're unaware, the advice that they're giving is not exactly case by case basis. They say that body types may vary, possibly, but also necessarily things like you should exercise. Here's a good exercise routine. You should eat a healthier diet, cut out sugar. These kinds of things aren't necessarily case by case basis. And if it doesn't work for a person, maybe they'll go find an influencer who does give information for their specific body type. These people are able to be adaptable. All right. Now, education online hasn't necessarily been a net negative. All throughout history, we've seen like financial literacy online has been a big thing because of influencers, and millions of young people now know about all of these important things like budgeting and stuff. The most important thing is that they say fitness influencers only care about themselves. We will make it very clear right now, this is a good thing. We want them to only care about themselves. Why? Because the way that they make money and the way that they make profit is directly tied to the quality of what they put out. If you compare this to somebody like a public doctor who makes the exact same wage because it's a fixed wage no matter how good of the quality they provide, what possible incentive is there for a public doctor to give good information? An influencer, literally their life and living is on the line in that they get money and they get followers from providing good information. This is why health influencers generally put out the right stuff. But enough of this. Let's move to the main 2 points I'm going to give you today, which is firstly on why we get a more healthy society, and secondly on benefits to influencers. Now, in terms of a healthier society, now we tell you that society ultimately becomes healthier. The first and most important benefit is that health-based influencing is going to encourage healthier lifestyles across society. Now, note that for most people, health advice traditionally is coming from doctors or government campaigns or schools. That's what the world looked like prior to influence and stuff. The problem is, like we said, that these institutions only have a very limited reach. Maybe someone only like interacts with a doctor after something has already gone wrong, or government campaigns are simply frequently ignored because people don't pay attention to that. One of the beauties of these influencers is that they frame the information that's vital in a way that people want to hear. It's the same kind of science behind why like gamifying things makes people more want to like study if study is gamified. It's because people see this as something they're scrolling and consuming. It's in a way that they're able to understand, but it also somewhat motivates them to actually want to do better for themselves. When you see somebody super fit online saying that this is how you get fitter, you exercise, you do this routine every day, a person's actually going to want to follow it. Instead, if they go to a doctor when they're already suffering from like heart diseases because they've made too many wrong choices, what good does that do a person? We need a way they can get both the availability of knowledge to know that the issue exists and the help that they need, which is accessible through social media. Now, on our side, we see millions of people being exposed to this daily content promoting things like exercise and nutrition and hydration and sleep and mental well-being or like stress management and stuff. And the exposure of this content changes social norms overall. When people continue to see this stuff online, we generally have a society shaped around wanting to be fit and wanting to be healthy and wanting to eat well. The affirmative may try to misunderstand. I guess the only possible thing they could say here is maybe like, oh, well, what if these people aren't informed? What if there's misinformation? Well, we already rebutted it and said that there's incentives and that this misinformation is going to quickly die out long term. But say we're extremely charitable, say that we somehow take this off. We don't necessarily think misinformation is strong enough to take this down. There's misinformation everywhere. There's always going to be bad actors. There's going to be journalists who lie. There's going to be teachers who are like incompetent. There's even doctors who make mistakes. This doesn't mean that we could sacrifice such a good for society, which is influencers promoting good things. By the way, it's 5 minutes 30. I don't know if anybody has a POI. I'd be happy to take it. But I guess if not, I'll move on to my second point, which is that health-based influencers also creates opportunity for creators. Now, while we will acknowledge that at the forefront of this debate, and what we care about most is society's health, this is another benefit which they actually uniquely are unable to provide, in that when you have health-based influencing as a market that people want to go to and stuff, historically, the ability to educate such a large audience was like restricted to things like major institutions or companies or universities or whatever. This opens up a whole new market for employment, especially in the digital age where this is becoming a skill a lot of people should have. People who have a passion for something like fitness are now able to easily reach people online. They can share methods that have worked for themselves. They can share the things that they know actually works. And so this is an economic opportunity. Many influencers are then going to be able to build a career off this, or businesses, or like even coaching services. Yet again, that's another benefit. You can get like private coaching from some of these influencers. Like that's a legitimate thing that exists. You message them, they check in with you daily, all right? And that costs money. So there are also paid opportunities for the premium stuff, but the difference is there is free opportunities too, which is almost the very best accessibility of information. There aren't really many free opportunities on their side other than like a free doctor's visit, which quite clearly is not going to fix your health issues in your entire life. Maybe they'll prescribe you some medicine. I don't think that helps with actually getting you to exercise all day. There's no encouragement. You're not constantly seeing on your For You page, hey, you need to exercise. You need to eat this amount of cabbage each day or something, all right? The point and the crux of this speech is influencers are best equipped to train society to become healthier, and we also create opportunities for them. For these reasons, very, very proud to oppose.
So in my speech as the second speaker of the proposition side, I'll be first rebutting the arguments given by the opposition, and then I'll be giving my substantive on how there will be less trust in health institutions generally. So now moving on to my rebuttals. So the opposition first said that there will be a healthier societies because doctors have limited reach and how influencers have a lot of reach. Now, Judge, first of all, this is not true because influencers are only actually spreading the product advertisements. Do you really think that influencers online are relying on social media to actually provide very good advice to other people? No, and in reality, oftentimes real good advice isn't advice that is easy to implement. Oftentimes it requires taking a lot of medicine that doesn't taste well, which influencers obviously won't want to do, since it would obviously ruin their reputation of being a good influencer online that provides good methods of treatment. Now, uh, additionally, even if influencers actually do reach people who live far away, this is also um this also harms vulnerable populations because if a person has no access to like a real doctor, they have like no way to verify whether an influencer's advice is actually safe. When they follow like when
Point
they
of
follow like
information.
sorry, yes,
Yeah, point of information.
yes.
Yeah, just to be clear, why exactly is it that people can't see a doctor on our side?
No, you wouldn't. I'll explain that later in my argument on how this actually alienates doctors and medical institutions later on. And anyways, back to my rebuttals um how influencers have more reach. Now if someone is following like a very dangerous trends like an extremely fast or like an untested herbal remedy, then they have actually no medical sa they have nothing to save them from when things go wrong. And reaching more people with unverified risky advice actually does not help at all because when things start to go wrong, they have no one to seek help from. Now the
Point
opposition
of
also
information.
talks about no thank you. They also talked about how this creates opportunities for influencers. Now, first of all, this is not true because in reality, the vast majority of like actually earning money from social media only goes to like that top 0.1% of the creators who already have a lot of followers in the first place and also high-end like filming equipment, etc. Now, because of this, only they have the actual financial the good financial profits from social media. Now, for ordinary people or like younger people trying to become a health influencer, actually it won't work at all because they don't have the background, and it's really hard to start off when you have so many monopolies in the social media dominating the platform. Now, moving on to my argument on how there will be less trust for health institutions. Now, in the past, when people wanted health advice, they only listened to real experts like doctors, nurses, and scientists, as my first speaker already characterized. Now, they work in formal, solid, trustworthy institutions like universities or hospitals, and they don't just work for like viewers and followers, they actually work for the true benefit of society. They have a dream to make society better and to make society healthier instead of influencers who just try to earn money or like get sponsors, etc. Now, these doctors have been spending years of their life
Point
digging
of
deeper and
information.
deeper in the world. No, no, thank you. In the world of medicine, and uh, and they back up their hypothesis with evidence from experiments. However, in the status quo, everything has changed because social media. Now, I have three more mechanisms to add on to my previous speaker's mechanisms on how influencers do this. Now, first mechanism on how they these influencers make everything feel like they're right at your fingertips. Now, they often do this thing where like one notification bell, and then you will be have a chance of winning a secret formula of solving of like reducing fat, and the or also like hitting that subscribe button and then you'll be able to have buy the medicine. And this makes everybody, especially the poor, trust them more because it makes them feel like they've proved it, even though after actually they did not. They just put a button there. But in now the second mechanisms here are influencers actually want to talk about controversial, interesting things like how the doctors are hiding this and like they don't want you to know this and things like that to attract attention from the public. Now, over time, because the public doesn't know this is a tool used to attract attention, they actually believe it. They start believing in these things and know and think that the public hospitals and doctors are bad. And this makes the influencers feel like they are the saviors and make the doctors look like they're actually the villains, while in reality, what they are not. Now, with thousands of these kind of influencers together, this creates a mass conspiracy theory over the internet that is very hard to erase from people's minds because every time you go onto the internet, you see things like this, and it's very hard for people to actually escape from this conspiracy theory due to other things, other factors such as cognitive biases like confirmation bias, etc. Now, moving on to my third mechanism on how the influencers make you and them feel very intimate and feel like friends. Now, none of us like to go to a hospital, right? It's scary, pale, and like full of like blank walls and like tubes. And influencers use this as their advantage and talk about how you can just do this at home and make it feel so attractive. And they also talk about like the influencers
Point of
them their
information.
past experiences, no thank you, or whatever to make them sound like they can be your friend. They make you they sound empathetic. They sound like they care for you and that their methods work for them and how it will work for you too. And so what are the impacts here, right? So obviously, first of all, this will alienate people from the hospitals, which therefore causes a lot of health issues in the first place. And secondly, everyone gets more and more unhealthy, and the more unhealthy they get, the more they go to hospitals. And when so much people go to the hospital because they're unhealthy from bad advice from influencers, hospitals actually get overflooded, and this causes a major problem in hospitals as well. So therefore, for all these reasons, we are so proud to propose. Thank you.
So first of all, I just want to clear up who these influencers are. They conceded at, I believe, second, that these influencers who the majority of people are paying attention to are the top 1%. So this heavily shapes a lot of the arguments in this debate because the top 1% have the highest priorities to provide accurate information. If somebody who is incredibly popular says something that's wrong, that reaches more people. But that means that that information will be proven to be wrong quicker and it will diminish their reputation. Ultimately, the number one way to make money as an influencer, which is their incentive, is to provide accurate and correct information. And so the fact that a lot of their arguments are contingent on the fact that there will be misinformation, this takes down a lot of their points.
Could we restart your speech? I got disconnected for a little bit.
No worries. Yeah, sure. So,
let me just set up the timer on Zoom before then I'll give the confirmation, yeah?
Yeah, sure. My apologies.
Good to go.
Okay. So I'll be starting my speech. Wait, just checking all good now? Good. Okay. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so first I just want to clarify who these influencers are. So the majority of these influencers are those in like the top 1%. That's the majority of the things people will be hearing. This isn't necessarily true. I believe that like it's an attention economy and this is in a large part a free market. So oftentimes the highest quality content will rise to the top. But in the cases where it is the top 1%, these people have the highest incentive to provide accurate and correct information. Why? Because when you're extremely popular and a lot of people hear what you say, if you say something that's verifiably incorrect, the fact that you are spreading misinformation will be disproven quicker, and thus it'll diminish your reputation. Ultimately, reputation is extremely important for these influencers as it's how they make most of their money. Okay, so first, I just want to clear up this point about misinformation, which I think a lot of the debate comes down to, is that these harms are coming from misinformation and not lifestyle influencers themselves. And so, in attempting to mitigate these harms by targeting lifestyle influencers, we're not directly targeting the core issue. Okay, so we've heard two main pushes on their side regarding misinformation. Number one, that the information from influencers will be of lower quality. Now, they gave us three mechanisms here. Number one, different body types. Now,
I actually think this is more of a benefit to our side because with public healthcare and doctors and whatnot, these people don't know your specific circumstances. However, given the sheer quantity of influencers that are out there, this means that there will be very personalized content. For example, it's a lot more likely that an influencer will share things like you with, for example, celiac disease, and will be able to provide advice based on their personal experience, which is more likely to be helpful rather than a doctor who doesn't have celiac disease. And we don't observe this on their side because the public healthcare system simply doesn't have this personalized aspects to it. And furthermore, with so many, so eventually we'll just see more personalized content, which means it's unlikely that they made the claim that you'll be listening to these top influencers and just what they're saying. Now, their second mechanism for this was that there'll be biased sponsors. Now, regarding biased sponsors, there are still checks and balances currently in place that go against this. So, for example, in the current social media landscape, we observe things like the fact that there are things like disclaimers at the beginning of videos that are mandated, saying things like this video has a paid sponsor in it. Influencers are required legally and mandated to disclose who these sponsors are, and thus the audience will be knowledgeable about this and will be less likely to just blindly follow this advice. Furthermore, the incentives for quality still exist. A sponsor that spreads just misinformation and says things like, if you don't do a pull up a day, you're going to die at 15. When this is proven false, these won't make money. Sponsorship, sponsoring people, I'll take you in a minute, is extremely expensive. And so these people don't want to waste their chance by spreading misinformation that'll be disproven. And I'll take you now.
So the opposition claims that a desire for a good reputation forces influencers to be accurate. So can you explain why the most followed wellness influencers consistently gain millions of followers by promoting, for example, scientifically debunked fad diets rather than like standard medical advice?
First of all, I don't think we have that at all in the current landscape. First of all, like I've said earlier and listed out these reasons already, but I'll repeat them now. So it's a free market and it's a tension economy. So ultimately, we see the highest quality content rising. There's no single mechanism. That's just a complete assertion that these people are rising to the top, when in reality, we've given you multiple mechanisms from incentive as well as multiple other things for why this simply isn't the case. So I don't think this assertion still stands. Now, furthermore, they tried saying that influencers aren't trained. Now to this, we say that influencers are, so if you want to go into influencing, it's not a very lucrative market, right? You're not likely to make money as a result of this. And so it's unlikely that somebody untrained will go into this when there are other fields in social media which make more profit. For example, things like food influencers make a lot more money than these like medical advice influencers. And so the untrained person is more likely to gravitate towards these easier things. Furthermore, if you are an untrained person, why would you want to go into a medical field and spread misinformation? Because if this gets debunked, it's highly harmful for your reputation and could stunt your ability to find jobs and other careers in the future. Therefore, they're incentivized not to do this, and so we'll observe this less. Furthermore, they're incentivized to provide high quality information for the reasons I've already disclosed regarding the fact that this is a free market and the fact that if you get debunked, it's likely not going to be good for you. Okay, but all of these are contingent on the fact that misinformation is, sorry, all of these are contingent on the fact that on their side of the house, these people will be informed from multiple sources and that our side is wrong. However, I think it's more important that we have any information and access to information than no information at all. Under their side of the house, it's possible that we'll see things like these already anti-institutional people, like anti-vaxxers, not reaching out to anyone at all and having no access to medical advice. Sure, some of it may be wrong, but even still, it's better that these people have a lot of advice and a little bit of it's wrong than zero advice at all. So, this point regarding audiences and like quality is largely contingent on a passive audience. A passive audience is an audience where they don't at all like respond and they don't like fact check and stuff. Now, they gave us 3 mechanisms for this. Number 1, that these people will idolize their influencers. Now, in some capacity, this is true, but again, the influencers that these people will be exposed to are likely the influencers who have risen to the top because of spreading accurate information. Because of this idea of exposure, that we're going to see people more likely to idolize the people they're more exposed to, and the people who get more exposure are the ones who are spreading accurate information. Refer to my mechanisms I've listed earlier. I think we can just weigh off. Furthermore, they said that these people would be using like charisma and persuasive lingo. Fundamentally, I think the average audience member of these social media sites is going to be able to discern the difference between persuasion, accurate medical advice, because these audiences don't just follow things blindly. They fact check. In the modern day, there is more information or access to information than any other time in history. People have the ability to like check from other sources. And furthermore, on our side of the house with lifestyle influencers, they'll be able to cross-reference what other lifestyle influencers are already saying. Furthermore, we also have checks and balances already existing. Things can be like proven false. And people will like check the comment section, and a comment might say, "Hey guys, this is wrong. Look at this source." And so it's unlikely this misinformation will be like present. Lastly, they heavily pushed the incentive of these influencers as money, and they said that this is like really, really bad thing. Actually, I think this is a good thing, because under their side of the house, we see that doctors are the people who are being incentivized. Now, doctors have a standard wage, and they pay that regardless. They don't have incentive to provide accurate information because their pay isn't scaled based on information. Also, regarding the incentive being money, that's the incentive for everyone. Doctors don't go into it for the love of the game; they do it for money. And so overall, for the reasons above, I'm very, very proud to oppose.
No, we currently live in an era where the pursuit of wellness have been weaponized by the pursuit of clicks. In the status quo, millions of vulnerable individuals open their like social media feeds every day looking for answers to, for example, their chronic fatigue, their like body state, or their deep-seated anxiety. So instead of finding evidence-based medical care, they find this glossy, unregulated market of health-based influencers. So these creators distill complex biochemical and psychological realities into like 30-second clips, promising that a specific supplement or a restrictive diet is the cure-all for like human suffering. So the government today stands firmly in support of the motion. So recognize that we are not opposing gym routines or people sharing healthy recipes, but we're opposing a structural phenomenon where the unqualified individuals leverage parasocial trust to commodify, commercialize, and distort public health, right? So by shifting health advice from the hands of credentialed like medical systems into algorithmic popularity contests, health-based influencing causes severe like physical, psychological, and systemic harms. So quick roadmap here. So first of all, talked about the burden of proof for both sides. Second about three main clashes, and third about weighing up at time. So before I jump into like burden of proof, I'd like to offer two pieces of clarification here. So first of all, they talked about how followers can just check other sources to validate and influencers' advice. But on the other hand, the opposition's defense relies on this really naive assumption that ordinary consumers suddenly possess this like clinical literacy to act as independent medical fast checkers. So when a vulnerable user is exposed to a highly polished, emotionally like persuasive video, they don't validate it by reading peer reviewed medical journals. They validate it by looking at the comment section and checking the influencers follow count, or looking at other influencers who are like selling the exact same trend. Now moving on to second piece of clarification. So they just completely misunderstand how social media algorithms work. So they assume that the highest quality content is measured by clinical accuracy, but it's not. It's measured by viewer retention, watch time, and emotional engagement. So an influencer's like incentive here is not to be as scientifically their incentive here is to keep eyes on the screen. So the reality of human biology is that true health advice here is incredibly boring. For example, sleep 8 hours, drink water, like eat a like balanced diet, etc. So the algorithm aggressively suppresses boring truth in favor of sensationalism, novelty, or like fear monitoring, such as like branding or like a silly like powder or something. So now moving on to like burden of proof. So first of all, our burden is strictly structural and ethical, so we do not need to prove that all health content on the internet. Yeah, I'll take the point.
Yeah, how is an influencer going to retain viewers if the influencer is pushing things that have been proven to be false?
Oh, can you repeat that? I think my internet is a bit lag.
Yeah, sure. How's an influencer going to retain viewers? Because you said viewer retention. How are they going to retain viewers if the influencer is pushing something that's been statistically proven to be false?
Okay, so to answer your PO, I talked about how it's like going to retain viewers, but on the other hand, we want it like they retain viewers because social media is an entertainment business, right? Not a medical journal. So content retains eyes through like parasocial manipulation, community validation, and aesthetic aspiration. So an influencer doesn't keep a follower because their clinical data is correct, right? They keep them because they're attractive, charismatic, and relatable. So when an influencer builds a highly polished echo chamber, the algorithm rewards how that content makes the viewer feel. So you can be 100% like scientifically wrong, but as long as you're entertaining, offer emotional comfort, and possess a body your audience envies, you'll still have the ability to retain like millions of viewers who choose comfort over a like long boring video. So now moving on to what the cons burnout proof. So they must prove that an individual with zero medical or psychological credential motivated by brand sponsorship is a safe and reliable source of biological advice for millions of people. They must defend a marketplace where creators actively this makes normal like human bodily functions for the explicit purpose of selling unverified supplements or workout programs. They must argue that ordinary, often vulnerable customers, such as like teenagers struggling with body image, possess the clinical literacy to filter out this dangerous misinformation from a highly persuasive social media feed. Now, moving on to the three clashes in this debate. So, first of all, is scientific nuance versus their fallacy. So, they talked about how influencers are highly effective, adaptable health solution, and if one routine doesn't fit, they can easily switch to another one. And also, they forces them to like they have this intention to produce this high quality like material. But on the other hand, why do we win this clash? So we win that by the opposition conflates this aesthetic production value with clinical accuracy, right? So the social media algorithm does not reward boring, scientifically validated facts like sleep, hygiene, and balanced nutrition. It rewards sensationalism. It rewards like a novelty and other kind of stuff. So high video editing quality, charismatic delivery, and a lean physique does not equate to like a medical safety or rigorous research, right? So now moving on to the next clash, which is on structural care versus superficial awareness. So they talked about how this creates a measurably healthier society by raising awareness, right? So the government wins by demonstrating that toxic business models of the health influencer, which relies on active destruction of public trust and standard health institutions to sell their own like supplements or wellness courses. Influencers must position themselves as the anti-establishments, who like possess secret knowledge that the doctors hide. So this profit-driven skepticism basically makes the vulnerable audience like against those evidence-based treatments, such as, for example, life-saving medications, vaccines, or licensed psychotherapy in favor of unregulated alternative therapies, right? So while opposition claims influencers act as preventative shield, their content is fundamentally skin deep and aesthetics driven. So they do not raise awareness of the actual health conditions. Now, moving on to the last clash in this debate, which is about human well-being versus economic utility, because they explain how it creates digital careers or market benefits and why we win this clash. So first of all, the government wins this clash by exposing the unethical nature of the opposition's economic defense, right? So we prove that this entire employment market is built on the systemic commodification of human insecurity and vulnerability. So influencers here do not generate wealth by solving health crisis. They generate wealth by like inventing them. So they create this pipeline designed to trap young and impressionable users in a cycle of constant self-doubt and consumption just to keep their own digital business profitable. Second of all, this clash comes down to the fundamental trade-off that the opposition here cannot defend. So a few thousand content creators securing brand sponsorship, scaling, or other stuff cannot outweigh this physical, psychological, and financial exploitation of millions of citizens. And thus, I will like strongly urge for a probiotic.
I don't get the opposition's obsession with drugs. Like most fitness influencing is telling you how to keep your elbows in when you're doing a push-up, not like drugs to like be lazy and skip all the exercise, right? Like the compelling narrative is working to get fit, not like just taking drugs and getting fit. And so I don't really see what their obsession with that is. And also most of the time it's illegal to recommend drugs. So I don't know the stuff that they're watching, but most fitness influencers are just like telling you how to do pull-ups and whatnot and like good routines. Okay, with that in mind, three issues. Firstly, on quality of information. Secondly, on accessibility of information. And lastly, on like economic impacts and like influences. So firstly, on the quality of information, I think this was the main push by the opposition. So what have we told you on this? We've told you a few things. Firstly, that people have that like influencers have an incentive to provide accurate information. They did provide like a few responses to this, which I will debunk in a bit. And secondly, we also talked about how basically they are uniquely going to provide more cross-referencing because you just simply get more points of view, right? Okay, so firstly on incentive, how they responded. Firstly, they talked about how it's only going to be like the top 1%. I think this was in response to another point, but I just thought it would be kind of nice to bring this up because the fact that is that the only way you get into the top 1% is for your viewers to be happy enough with you that they will like your video, that they will recommend your video to other people. And to be honest, the only way that they really do that is if you do actually achieve your stated goal, which is getting them fit. That means that some viewers are going to have to get kind of jacked from watching your videos for your videos to become successful. You need to have success stories. You need to have a compelling narrative for you to be in the top 1%. And so I figure this is like a pretty good incentive. And as I say, secondly, like, oh yeah, that's right. Meanwhile, like when they talked about the monetary incentive, and I will mention this in like the next thing, doctors have like the same monetary incentive, except that doctors don't have extra monetary incentive for doing a good job. Okay, secondly, they talk about how like they can just be charismatic. So, a few responses. Firstly, if the mother of a person who's in the hospital because your advice is crap is in the comment section dissing your videos, right? People are less likely to trust you because of the fact that you sent a kid to hospital because you told them to take the pills because apparently they were watching the videos that the opposition was watching, right? And secondly, people don't like really look at push-ups because they're fun. They look at push-ups because they want to get fit. If they laugh a little bit, but they're like still like if they're like if they weigh 5 kilograms more than they did since they started watching the channel, they probably wouldn't be watching the channel. Like you don't watch fitness videos for fun, you watch Sunyan memes for fun, which is why I watch Sunyan memes. Anyway, lastly, they talk about how like anti-establishment narratives like work pretty well. A, new material out third. B, that mostly only works if you're already anti-establishment. That only really works if your parents are anti-vaxxers and you're just in like an echo chamber, which doesn't really change any results because, well, you're still going to be anti-establishment. I think the receptiveness to the narrative comes from already believing in the narrative. Okay, so now on to stuff that they've brought up under this issue. Firstly, they talk about how like they will be liked and therefore trusted, even though they're not qualified and they'll do bad stuff. Okay, so I think a niche understanding of their specific area will generally tend to happen, right? These influencers, they did get jacked. They did get jacked for a reason. It wasn't from sitting around and at home taking pills, right? Like they needed to have some knowledge of like how to get jacked to like become influencers. And I think it's pretty intuitive that if you do more push-ups, you get more jacked. So it's not really that hard a job to do. It's just about like motivation. And also the competition means that the people you see in your feed are always going to be the best of the best, as I mentioned, and people will follow you because it works, as I also mentioned. And oh yeah, lastly, misinformation is largely symmetric. It's just you can cross-reference under our side because basically in reality, you're going to see wrong narratives. Like the grain thing that we brought up at first, that was like the pretty much the only real world example that like showed up in like the whole debate. And the thing is, that was the established narrative. That was what the government was saying. And note that that was wrong. So at most, what they're able to claim is symmetric. Oh yeah, and also like the anti-establishment thing. And another thing they mentioned on that thing is like talking about like conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers, I assume. So note that it's not fitness influencers who it's the political stuff that's like talking about like conspiracy theories and stuff. Fitness influencers generally aren't involved. If Donald Trump says to say something, generally they're going to be people who say something, even if it isn't fitness influencers. I think this is largely symmetric, and like basically there'll be fitness influencers who are against it. So I don't really think the opposition can claim like a particularly unique harm for them, like with this. Okay, lastly, they talked about how it's well, actually not lastly. They talked about how it's not for everybody. That's why there are lots of fitness influencers. We talked about this at second. Quantity. Also, exercise isn't that complicated. Those talked about how there's no incentive to be accurate, and we talked about backlash. And they talked about how like low SES people can't see the doctor. Well, influencers are mostly right, and that's better than the counterfactual, where the low SES people still can't afford to see the doctor, but now they don't know how to like keep their elbows in when they're doing a push-up, and they injure their shoulders too. Okay, now secondly, on accessibility of wait, actually, oh, I'll take a POI if you have one. Nope, I will. Well, I'll take that as a no. Okay, accessibility of information. What have we told you? We've told you that it's everywhere. They talk about how they're just trying to spread advertisements. And yeah, well, incentive profit incentive means they will give more accurate information as well. They talked about how they will not be incentivized to give you yucky medicine. The fact that influencers can persuade you to smash your cheekbones in means that they can probably persuade you to take some yucky medicine if it means getting better results. I think we've basically shown that influencers are compelling enough that if they can provide the results, they can really get somebody to do anything, which means that that doesn't really hold up. So yeah. Okay. And also they talked about how like doctors are still accessible. They aren't, they're expensive, and they literally conceded themselves that low SES people cannot access doctors. Therefore, we only have to prove for like the low SES people whether like influencers is better than no influencers. And also like basically there's no incentive for the doctors to give like good advice. And like, well, they only really go to the doctors if something goes wrong, which means that generally it's going to be a lag indicator. It's not going to be particularly helpful for actually preventing bad stuff from happening. You already have heart disease. You've already got a week to live by the time you go to the doctor. Okay, so lastly on the economic benefit to influencers, no response down the bench. We told you at first there's going to be an economic benefit. We told you at first there's going to be like passion and like there's like going to be a job. They talked about how it's only available to the top 1%. We did respond to this pretty well. Generally, the passionate people are going to be the ones in the top 1%. So the people who most want to get a job in that area, the people who most love that area are the ones that are going to be getting a job in that area because those are the ones that are going to be putting effort in. I think this means that generally the people who love that area are going to be incentivized. So still do it. The incentive still exists. My little brother still starts a YouTube channel, even though he's got no views. Thank you.
All right, a couple of things to re-clarify before I get into the issues. The first thing to note is that they kind of concede a lot of stuff. I think it's at second or something. They say that they still want health influencers, so they kind of like agree with a lot of our mechanisms that we tell you about why they are beneficial, why they fill the gap of making health information engaging, why like health advice is probably not going to be as accessible when it's coming from like a doctor or something. The benefits to young people, all of these things we tell you, they somewhat concede when they tell you that they still kind of support health influencers. They just don't want it to like take over the establishment or whatever, which I'll address. The next thing to say is kind of how the algorithm works. Now, we've told you this down the bench, but clearly it somewhat isn't being understood. We tell you it's an attention-based algorithm, and it's also based off incentives of what's good. They say that like, oh, what makes somebody go viral is being able to retain viewers or whatever. Somebody can't retain viewers on their page if their stuff they're pushing is lies. Why an influencer continues to gain followers is because the stuff they're pushing works, or it keeps people engaged, or it keeps people wanting to go to the gym. If somebody is pushing a thing which makes somebody want to go to the gym, which makes somebody want to go to a routine, which makes somebody want to eat food, and all of that stuff helps the person, that influencer will become successful. No influencer is in the top 1% of influencers with 1 million views on each video if none of their stuff works, because why would anybody go to them? And also, they say the word monopoly. There's no such thing as a monopoly. It's a free market algorithm. Anybody can come up and join, and we tell you this down the bench, all right? Now, also, the next thing is, like, what do these influencers actually look like? Now, I don't know why they make this into a contention with vaccines or whatever. It literally says it in the info slide what these influencers are doing. This is stuff like you should go to the gym or you should go on a diet, not like the government and drugs and stuff. It's utterly ridiculous. Anyway, 2 issues we're going to give you today. The first one is on awareness, and the second one is on advice. So moving on to awareness. Now, we tell you the crux of our thing is that people are able to accessibly see the critical information that they need. So this is the step before being able to actually like go to the gym or whatever. This is the step of having knowledge that there is something wrong, or that your health is at risk, or you're not eating as healthy as you should be, and you need to improve this. You go to the doctor once you realize this is a problem. In many worlds, you don't realize this is a problem if you're not told this is a problem. And the benefit and the unique benefit of influencers that we give you is that they raise awareness to this. They can bring out their statistics. They talk well, all right? They're not all just sitting there like eating a brioche bun or whatever. They're actually like telling you good information. This is pretty proven. Otherwise, they're not going to continue to get views. Now, the issue was on this issue that they lacked a lot of mechanisms. You know, they say that influencers must oppose the establishment, but why? Well, they actually do not give a mechanism here. But okay, we'll be charitable. We'll take them at their best case. So if they're like, you know, if they're like going to be losing views because they're pushing a thing that like is just unconventional, they're probably not going to do well. But at the same time, if they're opposing the establishment for a way that is true, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We gave you the example of the food pyramid. There's a ton of other examples of the government not pushing the correct things. The government isn't that vocal about you need to go to the gym and stuff. When do you ever hear the government talk about that? This is a gap in the market, so we are raising awareness for these issues. And also, if they are opposing the government and it's getting lots of support, like protein has for years, protein has got so much support to the point that it's forced the government to change the food pyramid. As we told you down the bench, this only happened because of influencers. So they create good change. Also, they had a lot of new material at third, so I wouldn't weigh that very highly. But we weigh this whole issue very highly as a whole because we want people to know stuff. If you go to the doctor when it's too late and you already have a heart attack, that's not going to do much well. Anyway, enough of this anti-disestablishmentarianism. All right, let's talk about the advice part of this. This is the second issue. We give you one main thing here. Well, we give you a few main things, but the most important one is that there are checks on these influencers. It's not just the comment sections. It's that people can actually speak out about these influencers doing the wrong thing. You know, they say this debate's about commercialization or whatever. It's not. That's not what these influencers are doing. They bring out like product placement or whatever. Okay, if the influencer signs a brand deal and that brand deal is harmful to people, that will not be trusted. People will trust brand deals less. Just look at somebody like Mr. Beast. This isn't necessarily like a fitness influencer, but his lunchly thing with mold, that's everywhere. People are making videos about it. That was really bad for like his whole brand or whatever. So you know, they generally have an incentive to do the right things and to partner with brands that they know are actually good because of personal experience. Yet another unique benefit that we provide you that goes unresponded, and also the incentive. And also we tell you about jobs, which they don't really talk about either. So overall, we provide you all of these benefits. We must win because we help people. Very proud to oppose.
At this point, the opposition is trying to kind of like trivialize this debate by like claiming that influencers are just like harmless gym teachers showing people how to do a push-up, and that anything dangerous would be illegal anyways. I think this is a very profound mischaracterization, right? I think that basic exercise tutorials are not what we're debating today, right? The real danger is when an influencer hooks a viewer with a simple like harmless fitness tip, right? Building like a very parasocial bond that exploits a massive like loophole of like the wellness supplement industry, right? I think that they don't sell like illegal prescription drugs. They sell like these random like sponsorship products that might not actually even work. And even if you put a disclaimer over there, people will probably say, oh my gosh, he said that sentence. He said that this product is good, and therefore I must buy it because that person's my idol, right? Okay. Moving on to like what we told you today, right? Firstly, we told you that there's going to be misinformation, and I think that you tried to like attack this a lot by saying that, oh, doctors also have like money incentive, but at the end of the day, at least at least they have like more like information that they could use this incentive for, right? At least they have like at least they have like more information that they can use to inform you about. So it doesn't matter if they also have money incentive, because at the end of the day, they're able to give you some information, at least more than what these like fitness people are telling you. And of course, I think that if a person went to their doctor and asked their doctor like if they should like how they should exercise, I think their doctor would probably like say like some like advice as well, right? I think that at the end of the day, I think that the doctors can still give you like some personalized information, even if doctors aren't your go-to. Just search online your conditions and like look at what actually like proven medical website actually tells you, right? Notice that these influencers probably have some research, but the top tier of these influencers are always going to be put first, right? The top tier might not even have what you need first because it's so hard to get into top tier, right? Nobody's actually going to share their actually like mystery recipes because that's probably a lot more tedious than what like 10 push-ups a day, right? Secondly, then we tell you that like it's profit based, and therefore, for example, it carries on a lot of bad things, right? I think that um I think that this means that there's going to be no genuine like interest or like incentive, right? Only incentive to have views. For example, you're going to make like clickbait and stuff like that, right? I think that is a very, very toxic because at the end of the day, if you actually only if you like click onto this video because you think it will actually make you better, but then even if you went on this and like the person says, oh, you have to like do a lot of times, and therefore at the end of the day, then like when you do a lot of times, then they just keep telling you to do a lot of times. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just going to be a worthless fight, and you're just going to stop doubting yourself, right? I think that um like sponsors, right? Even like sometimes the sponsors are bad, right? Sometimes the sponsors might not actually be beneficial to you, right? Even if there's a disclaimer, right? If the influencer says like the product is good, then people only want that one sentence to buy that product. And therefore, if they say that, oh, there's going to be disclaimers, I don't think it's actually that like I don't think that the disclaimers actually does anything at the end of the day for all these reasons. So